Hide your kids. Lock the doors. You're listening to HR's most dangerous podcast. Chad Sowash and Joel Cheeseman are here to punch the recruiting industry right where it hurts. Complete with breaking news, brash opinion, and loads of snark. Buckle up, boys and girls. It's time for the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
Oh, yeah. What's up, boys and girls? It is your favorite podcast, a.k.a. the Chad and Cheese Podcast. I'm your co-host, Joel Cheeseman. Joined as always, Chad Sowash is in the house. And we are at another month of the Bigfoot of big data, the Loch Ness of knowledge, the Sasquatch of statistics. Toby Dayton, CEO at LinkUp, is with us again. Toby, welcome again to HR's most dangerous podcast.
All right, guys.
Wonderful, man. Wonderful.
Well.
How about you? You've got a great backdrop. Is that a real backdrop or is that one of those digital ones? Because that looks really sexy to be a real backdrop.
He just needs some leather-bound books. Way too many paperbacks in his background. Way too many. I want the scent of mahogany to come through.
The curse of being a complete book addict. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, kids, this is the June jobs report. And guess what the BLS said? The BLS said that total non-farm payroll employment increased by 206,000 in June. And the unemployment rate changed just a little at 4.1%. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today jobs gained occurred in government, healthcare, social assistance, and construction. This from the household survey data. Sure don't know why we do this anymore. But anyway, both the unemployment rate at 4.1% and the number of unemployed people at 6.8 million changed a little in June. The number of long-term unemployed, those jobless for at least 27 weeks, rose by 166,000 to 1.5 million in June. This measure is up from 1.1 million a year earlier. The long-term unemployed accounted for 22.2% of all unemployed people in June. What you got for us, Toby?
Not too shabby.
It was,
not too shabby.
All right.
Another very solid jobs report for June. Continuing to come in above consensus. I think consensus for June was about just under 200,000, 190, depending on where you look, 180, 190,000. So continues to surprise to the upside, and another very solid report. Although I think the longer term backdrop, which we can get into around where things are headed, and is this how weak is this? And a lot of the headlines are saying, the recession, things, the Fed's got to cut, trends are down. If they don't start cutting, things are going to keep getting worse and worse. And we, for a whole bunch of different reasons, are not that pessimistic about the future. And we'll sort of leave aside the rate cut issue, but we've got a view that, and June was a very good example of this, and it's been true all year. The job market is cooling off, but it is very much coming into balance, way more than weakening. It's a balanced job market, full employment, and everything we're seeing points to that being the case going forward, rather than this deterioration that is going to lead inevitably to a recession and spiraled unemployment and all these other things that people are kind of getting worked up on. So
it's almost like news channels want a recession and they want it now because they've been talking about it for like 6, 7, 8+ months, for God's sakes. It's like, can we just focus on the numbers? It looks like things are cooling, which is exactly what the Fed wanted in the first damn place. Right? I mean, this is what we were trying to engineer, even though we don't like the tools that the Fed has available still. This is what has happened. This is what's going on. It's cooling just like the Fed wanted. We were looking for a soft landing. We got a soft landing. Now it's cooling exactly like we wanted it to. So what are your thoughts about this market today? You're hearing a lot of rhetoric. What do you think about it today, Toby?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I would. That's well said, Chad. I mean, that's exactly what our view is that we're everything that we had hoped and dreamed, and by the way, that nobody expected, when the
Yeah.
when the Fed hiked as aggressively as they did, and the soft landing was absolutely on nobody's radar, and 100% of the economists surveyed, a year and a half ago said recession imminent, and that the soft landing has happened. We've again, there's a few holdouts that say it's coming or it's likely to be here. They're still hedging and hemming and hawing about it. It's been here for a while. We're in a, if you go one slide forward, the job market is perfectly balanced, and it's just unbelievable how perfectly balanced the job market is, and that as has been widely noted, the job market has been the engine around the U.S. economy post COVID, and it has put us in a place where we've outperformed every other economy in the world, and it's because of the job market coming into equilibrium, achieving balance, and that has led to a very, very strong economic backdrop. It's different than it was. Labor demand is less than it was post COVID. That should be no surprise to anyone. I don't think it is, but it's people who, to your point, Chad, are sort of wanting to point to doom and gloom and scary headlines and all this sort of fear mongering. You can point to the decline. It's just coming into balance, and we're in a really, really phenomenal place right now. And we don't see with our job openings, actually our job openings, and again, we're pulling labor demand data. Our data comes straight from employer websites around the world, millions and millions of jobs updated every day directly from employer websites. So it's essentially now casting really accurately data around what's going on in the economy. And our job listings are up this year, like just under 5%. The government data is down. Their job openings, the JOLTS data, is down 10%. So if you are looking at JOLTS data, you actually do have a little bit of a more negative picture than what we're seeing in our data. Time will tell which of these stories is true, but we're very confident in our view of a very solid job market that just continues to chug along.
Toby, let me give you a few things that concern me. And just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean I'm necessarily wrong. But I want to know from your perspective the data on some of these things. Number one would be retail and construction. We know that historically those are sort of leading indicators on where things might be going. If Target isn't selling more, stuff, then they don't need as many people, and then that kind of snowballs. So last month or recently, I know we've seen like Walgreens, Levi's. We've seen some big name retailers, Nike, in terms of stock and earnings. I don't want to say collapse, but do very poorly. What are you seeing on the retail side? And the second side is on the construction. We know that, if houses are being built and there's a forecast that we're going to be able to sell more houses. What are you seeing on retail and construction? And then the other thing that concerns me, a lot of these jobs are government jobs. I think 70,000 or so of the 206 are government jobs. And we're dealing with a huge deficit. Like, is that going to catch up with us at some point?
Yeah.
Just hiring more and more government folks while also being in debt. Talk about those two things, because those kind of concern me a bit.
And again, I will say too, Joel, we don't necessarily, there are things that definitely everyone should be legitimately paying attention to. And in a balanced job market, in a balanced economy, there's going to be volatility up and down. It's not like we're in this boom market that is going straight up and is chugging along in a full recovery mode. We're in a very balanced, steady state, but that is, we're coming in off of a recovery, very strong one, and rates are high. So until the Fed does start cutting, there is going to be some of those kinds of things you just pointed out are good examples of where the Fed, to your point, Chad, has achieved its goals of slowing down the economy. We have gone from, 80 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour. Nice, comfortable speed. It's slowing down by design. And so with high rates, and good wage gains. Wages are higher than inflation, so there are real earnings there. But households are, households and consumers have pulled back. Things are different than they were 6, 9, 12 months ago when there was post-pandemic sort of euphoria, a lot of job changes, a lot of raises, a lot of spending, a lot of pent-up demand, a lot of travel, a lot of everything. Those days are behind us. There's no doubt. So you've got retail sales are a little bit, everything is kind of normalized now, and normal today feels different than what it was a year ago, but normal is still really good compared to the down picture that I think a lot of people are pointing to. And retail sales is an example of that. I think you've got, you did have some overhiring in tech and a lot of white collar jobs and large cap tech, and you've got layoffs that get a lot of attention, but that's because they were hiring at insane levels coming out of COVID, and they've kind of shifted gears a little bit. The housing market, and there's a lot to be said there. Generally, high rates are having an impact on housing, and nobody, there's this absolute locked in effect where nobody's going to sell their house because they've got really nice low rates. They're not going to go buy a house. There's nothing on the market. Right. So until the Fed moves, housing is really messed up in terms of liquidity in the housing market. And, I think one of the big things when the Fed does start cutting is what's going to happen to housing. I think there's going to be a lot of pent up demand that's going to have some pretty volatile effect on what's going on there when that happens. So there is, but again, all of this is just sort of what you'd expect to see in a normal economy, a normal job market, which is really, frankly, just a really good place.
LinkUp is the leading provider of deep, accurate, and actionable labor market data. Unique in that we only get job listings from the one source of truth, the employer's website. By going to the source, we avoid all the duplicate and expired job listings that plague job boards and thereby other job data sets. Our data offers the clearest window into employers of all types and sizes throughout the world for an ever-growing number of use cases and applications.
One thing we've talked about on the show is trying to get the BLS out of the quagmire of using the same kind of data and instruments and whatnot that they have for decades. And this here, the tracking of errors, right, which everybody wants to point to, but there's always been errors, and there's always an error effect. The difference between what BLS, and help listeners, if you would, just really quickly, better understand the difference between the type of data that you guys are using and BLS is using, kind of like the household survey data.
Yeah. So the BLS does, they've got for their jobs reports on a monthly basis, it is all survey based data. They've got two. One is they survey businesses called the establishment survey, and that does part of the report, and the other half comes from the household survey, where they're literally calling up houses around the country and trying to, how many people live in your house, how many are working age, how many are working, how many are looking
Who's
for
answering the phone? That's my question.
I don't
want to answer the phone anymore.
No one's answering the phone, and the response rates have plummeted.
Oh yeah,
they're getting worse. And on top of it all, not only that, but there's been some very significant reports that have come out that the budgets for the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the survey, they're proposing slashing budgets. So as bad as it is, it's likely to get worse. And yet that's what people are looking at and pointing to. And again, so our data is not survey based. We're literally going out every single day on the web and looking at job openings from employer websites. And that, from our standpoint, it's a great example of data now coming into, and we've been doing this for 20 years, but it's sort of new to a lot of people, and certainly new to people that have been, using antiquated survey results for data. It is, it's still becoming it's still in the process of becoming more widely adopted.
Based on the number of healthcare jobs that need to be filled, the people who would be answering the phone are obviously in the hospital because of all the healthcare jobs that are being filled. That's where they are.
Yeah.
That's
we'll that's again. So we that's why we've got, going back to the, sort of our view of what's going on under the hood in the job market, and a little bit to, broadly to the economy as a whole, is based on actual data instead of survey data.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, while we're talking about actual data, CNBC, and there have been other establishments, media
journal, ABC, everybody.
They're talking about all these fake ghost jobs, and to be quite frank, Toby, I mean, I remember back in the day when I was at the National Labor Exchange, when we were working with state workforce agencies, and they kept saying, "Look, these jobs aren't real. But they were evergreen jobs, and they're kind of like the Amazon warehouse jobs, where they're constantly hiring. You just can't turn the faucet on fast enough, so they keep it open, right?" I'm sure there are other variations of that thing, but this to me just sounds like a bunch of bullshit. It drives me crazy seeing this. How, as a guy who's well steeped 20 years plus in the jobs market and understanding jobs data, what do you think about this kind of stuff?
He's fired up, man. Look at him. Get him, Toby.
He's red in the face.
Yeah, I would. I would agree with you entirely. You and me both. I just, seeing these articles out there just is, and we respond to them on occasion with our data, but it's tough to do, and they're largely. There's a lot to unpack there, but generally, all of those articles about fake jobs, ghost jobs, are absolute bullshit. I mean, they frankly, and it's never 100%. There are companies and there are jobs out there, and we can get into sort of the sources and where and what, but and this screen, and you go back to the top of that article.
Well, you're bringing the receipts, which is what I like here, because look at this. There
was an article that came out in the Journal that was done by a company that did a survey. It was actually an invoice factoring company that did a survey of businesses, and they came out with a report on ghost jobs, and then the Journal picked it up. And this was a year ago. We basically said it's an absurd myth. What I will say is, and where some of this is based on, is there are job postings on job boards that are, scams, fraud, lead gen, expired listings. There's a lot of syndication and duplication on job boards. You've got paid ads, programmatic advertising. You've got this syndication. I mean, you look at the average, and we know a lot of data from other companies that use and rely on job board data for trying to get insights into what's going on. And the duplication in those job board data sets is typically 90%. I mean, literally 90% of the jobs are duplicated. So there is a lot of garbage out there in the job board data world and on job boards. That is a very different phenomena when you're talking about the fact that job openings as a whole, there's a bunch of fake jobs that employers are posting and they have no intent to fill. And they're, this article that you guys pulled up before, the CNBC one, talked about the reasons why companies are doing this, to pretend they're hiring, or they're trying to win customers, or they're trying to appease their frustrated employees and say, hey, we're hiring people, help's on the way, or whatever these ridiculous things are that they cite in those kinds of articles. Again, I will not say that companies, no company has ever done that. There certainly are. It is not this, sort of epidemic that is sweeping the nation in terms of what companies are doing. It is, I think there's a lot of a lot of the pent up job seeker frustration that's, voiced in these articles is because of the average job board is not doing a good job of presenting high quality job openings to their users, and it's a degraded set of openings. They've got a lot of garbage in there, and when you're filling out an application, a lot of job seekers think they're applying to those jobs. They're actually not. They're in a lot of cases filling out an application that company is then going to use that data, sell that data, do a lot of other things to it. That
Phishing.
application does, and so people say, the other side of this coin is employers don't respond to job seekers and candidates when they apply. Well, a lot of those applications that job seekers think they're filling out are never going to the employer. Yeah. They're going into the website that you happen to be on, filling that out, and you're actually providing them with information that they're going to turn around and sell.
And that's why when this news came out, I was like, Toby's our guy. He doesn't look at job board data. He goes right to the source. And my fear with the advent of AI, that this issue is going to get more attention. There's going to be more stuff put on free job sites. There's going to be, AI video interviewing people that they think is the actual company. Like, I think this is going to be a big issue, going to scare a lot of people. It's going to get highlighted in the news stories. So it's important to go to people like you that cut through the clutter and look at the actual data from the actual hiring companies to say, this stuff is BS, and here's why.
And
let's take a look at this data
and
real
I appreciate
quick. Okay?
it. And this chart's a perfect example. So we, and again, one sliver of these stories are these, evergreen jobs, and these jobs that are stale. These companies are not actually hiring. We actually, again, we've got the real openings, the data. We know exactly what companies are posting these. We know exactly how long these jobs are being posted on their career portals. We know when they come down. We know what kinds of roles they are. We know the zip code that they're in. We've got unbelievably accurate granular data. And when you look at the data, these are absolutely real job openings. They're hiring people with these postings. They typically are in low-paying, minimum wage jobs. They're very much blue-collar jobs in high-turnover industries like, food prep, healthcare, home health aides. Very high turnover. Some sales jobs, warehousing jobs. And they are hiring in very large volumes, and there's very high turnover. So they keep these job openings up all the time because they are perpetually recruiting for them, and they're filling these roles. We know they're filling these roles. These are not bullshit listings, and you can literally track it with our data. And so again, you can make a lot of erroneous assumptions when you just sort of look at the headlines, or you're trying to create these scare headlines, or this sort of apocalyptic hellscape around what employers are doing, and it's just not the case at all.
Right here you can see it's 78,000 of these jobs are sales jobs. We know those are high turnover jobs. 52,000 in food preparation, and then you take a look over here on the right, which is obviously the ones that they're saying that are fake. At food prep, sales, healthcare. I mean, what do we expect? These are hard to fill jobs, and some of these jobs are filled constantly, right?
And they are, they are, and they are the jobs. And this goes back a little bit to sort of the underpinnings of the economy. They are in a very healthy economy. These jobs are particularly difficult to fill. They take a long time to fill. So they are. It just, there's a lot of factors there that, again, the data is conclusive when you actually ignore the job board user experience, job board data. That whole, and again, those are a lot of the nuances that people who are not deeply immersed in this space don't really even understand the differences between job board versus a corporate career portal. They all just sort of lump everything
Yeah.
together, and it's, that's not surprising. It's not
Yeah.
a bad thing, but
Well, if you
you've
don't
got
know
to
what
be
you're talking
careful
about, don't fucking talk about it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's the
And if
problem.
you're going to write a story about it in the media,
Yeah.
do the work and actually try to get actually what's going on, or some sophistication around it, rather than just taking up,
Or
somebody's
at least
clickbait.
just call Toby, for God's sakes. Call Toby when you have these questions. All right, Toby, we're going into another month. Let's play a little prediction game. This show should just be called Good Vibes Only, because since we've been doing it, it's been like Goldilocks. Everything is going according to plan. Should we expect another month of same old good stuff, or do you see any clouds on the horizon? And that rate cut question, where do you fall on that?
Yeah, generally our view is that it is we're going to stay in this balanced job market. Things will bounce around month to month, but generally we expect good, continued, solid job gains. We saw job openings come down a little bit in June, so there may be a little bit of, job gains may come down a little bit from June this month in July. But again, I think generally speaking, our view is that the job market is balanced, it's solid, it's going to remain that way. The continued trend there is better than I think consensus forecast. In terms of the rate cuts, that is that's a little bit of a harder issue. I think generally everybody is sort of, not expecting a surprise cut in July. September is kind of now the consensus. I would tend to agree with that. I think that there's a lot of people that are coming out and say, why wait? Let's just do it. Let's just start. It's going to be better. The downside risk of waiting is becoming bigger. I would tend to generally agree with that. I think a July cut would be very positive, and I don't think the risk of inflation popping back up in some crazy way is a serious risk. But I don't think anyone's expecting a cut in a couple of weeks, or whenever that is, the July. I think September is probably where it's going to be, and we'll sort of see what happens after that. So I'd say, in the fall and to the end of the year, one cut I would get for sure, and maybe two. It would be our sort of baseline forecast,
Right,
and I think that would be
more of the same.
Winning.
More of the same, everybody. All right, that is
Excellent, Toby.
our time with Toby Dayton. You know him as the Sasquatch of statistics. Toby, for our viewers here that want to know more about you, maybe connect with LinkUp, where do you send them?
linkup.com is the best place to read our outlook and our views, take a look at what's going on. We now cast some of our data, and the easiest way to get in touch with us if you're interested in really high quality, accurate labor demand data from around the world.
And the
if
guy
you're
you
from
should
the
call
BLS, yes.
if there are ghosts
Toby.
posting questions, because he's got the real deal. Toby, we'll talk again next month, man. Chad, that's another one in the can. We out.
We out.
Thank you for listening to, what's it called? The podcast. The Chad. The Cheese. Brilliant. They talk about recruiting. They talk about technology. But most of all, they talk about nothing. Just a lot of shout-outs of people you don't even know. And yet you're listening. It's incredible. And not one word about cheese. Not one. Cheddar. Blue. Nacho, pepper jack, Swiss. So many cheeses, and not one word. So weird. Anywho, be sure to subscribe today on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. That way you won't miss an episode. And while you're at it, visit www.chadcheese.com. Just don't expect to find any recipes for grilled cheese. It's so weird. We out!